What's up, Flannelverse? Are we live? Can you let me know if you see me right now? Because the button that usually says that I'm live isn't working, but the other button is saying I'm live. Let me know in chat if you can see me and hear me right now. I think we're having issues with StreamYard. All right, I'm going to wait a second here. Okay, now I'm seeing some viewers finally. Let me know. Let me know in chat if you see me. Am I talking to myself right now? Hockey Freak Sean says no. Okay, now I think I'm live. All right, I'm going to give it a second here because now I see the end stream button where it's supposed to be. So I think there was just a delay. All right, I'm giving it a minute here. Not sure what's going on. Good now. Okay, we're good to go. Apologies for that. I don't know what just happened with my StreamYard, but a little bit of a mix up there. For some reason, it said live on my screen, but then it showed 0 viewers and the end stream button wasn't there. So not sure what happened, but we appear to be good at this point. We are ready to break down the Thursday night football slate between the Dolphins and the Bills. We're going to go position by position as usual. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses, and kickers. At the end, I will take some questions as I make my own lineups using Run the Sims. Shows just like last year, I'm going to be going through usage, coach speak, all of that at the beginning. And then at the end, I just add on an additional 30 minutes to make my lineups using Run the Sims. If you are interested in trying out Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment of any of their products. I think it's really cool. You can judge for yourself after seeing the way that I use it, but looking forward to it. All right, let's talk through it. Actually, I need to pull up my article here because I wrote down some interesting stats from this game, and I'm not going to get them right if I don't have it right in front of me. So let me pull that up real quick. But we're going to get into quarterbacks to start. Good to see all of you here. Thank you for letting me know that you could not, and then could hear and see me. Appreciate all of you showing up as usual. If you could like the button, as Brandon said, that is always helpful and appreciated. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. So if you would subscribe, I would also appreciate that. Hoping to get to 5,000 by this weekend. Thinking through some kind of a giveaway, probably hats or something once we get to 5,000 subscribers. Haven't figured out exactly the mechanics of how that is going to work, but if you could subscribe, I would very much appreciate it. And of course, if you want to get notified when I go live, click that little notification bell as well. All right, starting with the quarterbacks. The easiest position to talk about generally. Tua Tagovailoa projected for 47% total ownership, 41% of that in the flex, 6% of that at captain. I think he's a fine play. He's not like the biggest priority for me, but I have no issue with the 47% going to Tua. The Dolphins so far this year rank 13th in pass rate over expectation. They probably will need to pass more than usual today. So I think the expectation will already be high in a game with the Bills, who are just a good team that's going to put up a lot of points. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing for the Dolphins today. Yeah, as you can see here, both weeks so far, 5%, 6% over expectation in terms of their pass rate. He doesn't run like at all, has not reached double-digit average rushing yards per game since his rookie year. So you can't really expect anything on the ground from Tua, but that does make him easier to know how you want to play him, because you're going to want to stack up Tua regardless of where he is in your lineup. If you have him in the captain spot, you're going to want multiple pass catchers in the flex. If you've got him in the flex, you're going to want at least one pass catcher. Carlos says I'm lagging. Are other people still finding me lagging? I think my internet looks like it's okay right now. But let me know if you're having issues. I could try switching up the network I'm on if we are still having issues. This one seemed to be good before we started, but and appreciate you hitting the like despite not wearing a flannel. The hat qualifies as a flannel. I just want to make sure we know that the flannelverse hat is the flannel these days until it gets colder out and I need a flannel to wear. So yeah, Tua, I think if I come in underweight to 47%, like, it's not a huge priority for me to get to 47% Tua. I think that he's a totally fine play there. If the Sims are giving me 47%, he's not the player, the first player that I'm going to want to cut out. Again, I think he's going to have to be throwing a lot on this Bills defense. It's not the easiest matchup with the Bills, of course. They have a pretty good defense. Teron Johnson, the cornerback, now I'm forgetting his name, for the Bills, is in tonight. So they're missing a couple. They're missing Matt Milano. They're missing Ed Oliver, but they are generally going to be a pretty good defense. Bills defense has allowed the fewest passing yards in the NFL so far this year, just 292 passing yards through 2 weeks. That's pretty crazy. But they're allowing 7.1 yards per attempt, which is the 13th most. So teams just not really trying to throw on the Bills much. Maybe just don't have the ball all that often. Anyway, I think ultimately I am not taking a huge stand on Tua. We'll see what the Sims give me, but I think the 47% total ownership, totally fine there. Josh Allen projected here for 51% flex ownership, 35% captain ownership. And I ran the Sims earlier and was not getting that much Josh Allen in general. It was scaring me. I was getting like less than, or I was getting about half of the projected field ownership when I keep him at these numbers. And that scares me a lot with a player like Josh Allen, who is, I think, just probably the best player on the slate, the best fantasy player on the slate. So I don't think I'm comfortable taking that big of a stand against Josh Allen. And in particular, I was only getting like 4% at captain. Now, I think the reason for that is they have him projected for 35% captain ownership. And I think that's high. I'd be sort of surprised if we see Josh Allen get this high, given the number of other pretty strong captain viable players tonight. So I'm actually going to move his ownership down from 35% to maybe 25%. That's about where, Rotogrinders has him at 24%. I think I'm more comfortable with that number because I don't want to just lose everything because I don't get to Josh Allen at captain. I don't want to take that big of a risk. So I am going to probably lower the ownership on Josh Allen in my once I run the Sims later on. But I think Josh Allen, fantastic play. I probably don't want 86% like he's projected to be here, but I think I would like to be. I'd like to have at least like 20% captain Josh Allen, probably, and maybe 50% flex. Like I think I would like to have over 50% Josh Allen exposure overall, which is not what I was getting in the Sims. So as I play with the Sims later, you'll see that I'm trying to get to more of Josh Allen than they're giving me. I think the reason that he doesn't project extremely well, I think that is multifold. I think it's partially just that they are expected to win by a lot, so probably not as necessary to play Josh Allen, and he's projected for a lot of ownership, and he is expensive. And honestly, we don't have awesome value on this slate. So I think there's multiple reasons that it's a little tough to get to Josh Allen. But I want to make sure that I have a good amount of Josh Allen, even if it is probably going to end up being less than the 86% we have here. I think I want to be somewhere between 50 and 70% Josh Allen is kind of where I'm comfortable because, he's one of the best fantasy players in the NFL, and it's a great matchup with the Dolphins. The Bills are low in terms of pass rate over expectation. So far this year, they rank 27th in pass rate over expectation for the year. However, the Dolphins defense has allowed 502 pass yards. That's the 10th most in the NFL through 2 weeks, and 9.6 pass yards per attempt, which is third most. It's a fantastic matchup for Josh Allen. If the Dolphins can do anything, I would expect Josh Allen to have a pretty big game here. I like Josh Allen quite a bit. I'm playing one line. Would you play Josh Allen captain? He's viable. He's one of the players that I would consider there. Probably I would play Josh Allen and play some of the lower owned pass catchers is probably the way I would play it if I were just making a single entry lineup. But I think there's a lot of ways you can play Devin Achane. You can play James Cook. I think is a pretty strong captain option. Plenty pretty good options there. But yeah, probably if I were just making one and I was hand building, I think Josh Allen's probably the first place I would go. And with Josh Allen, you don't need to stack him up at all. He is elite, one of the most elite one of the most elite rushing quarterbacks there is. I think he's rushing over 50 yards per game so far this year. Has, I think, a touchdown in each game, and obviously it kind of goes back to his whole career. He's just one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. So you don't really need to stack him up regardless of where he is in the lineup. Typically, if I have him in the captain spot, I would prefer to have him stacked up with at least one pass catcher. And I do like the idea, and I've talked about this before. I like the idea sometimes of overstacking the rushing quarterbacks because I think it tends to go under owned by the field. People think, well, I don't need to stack him up because he's going to run. A lot of these fantasy points are going to come on the ground, so I don't need to like multi-stack Josh Allen. I like the idea of then playing it the other way of just, well, what if he is just throwing a lot? And that's the way he gets there is touchdowns to Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, or just mixing up a lot of pass catchers with the rushing quarterback is a way that I like to play it sometimes, because I think that's a way that he could score a ton of fantasy points that is maybe under accounted for by the field. But yeah, I think Josh Allen, an objectively very strong play. I don't think I'm telling anybody anything they don't know with that. All right, we will move on and talk about the running backs, both quarterbacks, both running backs, and optional. If it's possible, have you tried doing it, Sean? If you can afford to do it, I think it's definitely viable if you can afford it. Running backs, Devin Achane looks like a great spot for Devin Achane. So in the sims that I've run so far, getting to just a boatload of Devin Achane, making it into over 90% of my lineups. I don't think I want him at over 90% of my lineups. I don't think that this is like the biggest slam dunk spot for Devin Achane. So far, it has looked like that. To be clear, this has been an awesome matchup for running back so far this year. And I do like Devin Achane quite a bit tonight. I just don't think I want 90+%. Given that he is 10,800, there are a lot of other pay up options that I like quite a bit as well. But he's an objectively strong play. He is facing a Bills defense that has allowed 338 rushing yards through 2 weeks. That is the second most in the NFL, and 6.8 yards per carry, which is the most in the NFL. It is worth noting that those two games have been against the Ravens and the Jets, who both have elite rushing quarterbacks and elite running backs. So I don't know how much we want to attribute those numbers to just like they faced awesome running games versus the defense is bad. But Ed Oliver, who is currently the number one ranked overall rush defender at defensive tackle in the NFL per PFF, is out for this game for the Bills. So the spot gets a little bit better. He was also out last week against the Jets, but it does appear to be a pretty good spot for Devin Achane. He is expensive, as OMG Low says. Yeah, he's a scary fade. To be clear, not fading him. Just don't think I'm going to have him in 90% of my lineups. I think I'm going to lower that a bit because there are a lot of players that I really like that you have to pay up for on the slate. So I want to spread that out. I don't want to put all of that risk on Devin Achane. But part of the reason I'm getting there is he's projected for 30% flex ownership, 14% captain ownership. Those are certainly low numbers and reasons that I want to get above weight to Devin Achane. If he's only going to come in at 44% total ownership, yeah, I would love to get over those numbers on Achane. Looking at his usage so far this year, 18 carries and 14 targets. So that's 9 carries and 7 targets per week. Quick math there. 68.5% route participation, just elite usage for Achane. If they're able to move the ball, he should put up a lot of fantasy points. Yeah, let's win 500K tonight. Let's win more than 500K tonight. How about one person wins 500K and the rest of us win a lot also? That's the dream. And then people can win some hats. Outside of Devin Achane, Jalen Wright is, I believe, back tonight. Excuse me. I looked at the inactives and I'm pretty sure Jalen Wright is back, but now I'm questioning myself. That is right, isn't it? Somebody, I'll just pull it up. Fairly certain that Jalen Wright is back though. So he could cut into the workload of Ollie Gordon, which was not great to begin with. But yeah, he is. So Jalen Wright is back. It's a weird situation with the Dolphins running backs because of Jalen Wright returning. So far, Ollie Gordon just 3 carries, 2 targets on 14% route participation through 2 weeks. Weird thing there is Mike McDaniel had said multiple times this week that they wanted to get Ollie Gordon more involved last week. They were planning on using Ollie Gordon more last week. The game script just didn't go the way that it needed to for Ollie Gordon to get usage. So it sounds like there were, at least last week, game scripts where they were planning to use Ollie Gordon more than they did. So I kind of like the play this week because who knows? I don't know what that means exactly where they would have used Ollie Gordon. Maybe it's just if the game is not super close, because I think that was a pretty close game with the Patriots. A lot of long plays, a lot of scoring. Maybe if they just have the ball more, they're running a little bit more, they use Ollie Gordon a little bit more. But it's just good to hear that they planned to use him more than they did last week. But then, of course, you get Jalen Wright coming back. That could be, maybe they don't have the same plans this week. I don't know for sure. But if he's going to be low owned, I'm pretty intrigued by Ollie Gordon. I think that he probably has the lead on Jalen Wright right now. I don't know that for sure, but that's my lean right now. It looks like Run the Sims currently is just splitting them 1.8 to Jalen Wright, 1.7 fantasy points to Ollie Gordon, and giving them 0 ownership. I think I'm going to give that to Ollie Gordon. And if I'm wrong, I don't think it's that likely to bite me anyway. Because I don't think that Jalen Wright's is going to take the full workload, but I think that I want to. Yeah, RG has Ollie Gordon with a little bit of a lead over Jalen Wright. They have Jalen Wright at 1 fantasy point, Ollie Gordon at 3.66, just 6% ownership to go into Ollie Gordon. I think I'm going to adjust things in favor of Ollie Gordon getting a little bit more workload, because I think he's the one who could benefit the most here. He's only 2,200, not getting a ton of ownership. Again, Mike McDaniel was saying that he wanted to use him more last week. He is the most physical running back on the Dolphins, so you would think he could get some goal line work. I think there's enough positives there that I want to take some shots on Ollie Gordon. I'd like to get over the field. Wake says McDaniels also just likes to say things. He says a lot of weird stuff, that dude. But this was something that seemed promising, so something that I would like to take some shots on. Jalen Wright, we just don't know. He could come back and just be the RB2 there. If you want to take shots on Jalen Wright, I think that's fine. I'm just going to put my eggs in the Ollie Gordon basket because of the positive coach speak, the cheaper price tag, the fact that he's, a little bit of a different runner, being the most physical, maybe more likely to pick up some goal line work. My eggs are going in the Ollie Gordon basket. I also think Alec Ingold is a fine play. He also could get that, goal line work, being the fullback there. He's only 400 through 2 weeks. Alec Ingold has 0 carries and 4 targets on 20.5% route participation. Those 4 targets are obviously promising for Alec Ingold, because at his price tag, you really don't need that many fantasy points to separate. So yeah, I think Alec Ingold, a pretty strong play at no ownership here. I'm curious, does RG have him anymore? They have them at just 4%. Yeah, I think we don't have that many awesome options. We've got a few reasonable options below 1,000 today. We do have some players that are viable below 1,000 today, but none of them are clear slam dunks. I think Alec Ingold is as good as any of them below 1,000. On the other side, the Bills running backs really interest me. I think this is an angle that I plan to lean into today, is just what if the Bills smoke the Dolphins and just run a ton. And I'd like to have lineups where I'm using all 3, maybe not all 3 in the same lineup, but I want to have a lot of all 3 of the running backs: James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. I think I'm going to be overweight to at least both of the backups. And I would like to have some lineups that have at least 2 Bills running backs in them. I think they're all very strong plays. And there is just a way this works out where the Bills crush the Dolphins and they're running it the whole game. And James Cook is mostly putting up his fantasy points in the first half. Bills got up to a big lead second half using more of Ray Davis. He's getting his fantasy points in the second half. And then Ty Johnson, maybe that game script doesn't necessarily work for Ty Johnson, who's more of a passing game passing game running back. But I still think that he's just an objectively strong play on this slate through 2 weeks. Let's see the Bills numbers. So through 2 weeks, Ty Johnson has just 4 carries, 2 targets on 31.3% route participation. Ray Davis has 10 carries, 1 target on 10.8% route participation. I thought it was interesting looking at here. Let me just pull up last year's, because I think things have not changed all that much from last year. Let's see. I'm going to change this. I'm going to go to fantasy points scored 2024. Just a little bit of a bigger sample size, because I don't think 2 weeks of data is that instructive. So I'm just going to pull up the data from last year, just looking at the fantasy points for the running backs on the Bills. So we had Ray Davis had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games where he scored double-digit fantasy points starting in week 6. So over the second half of the year, really strong for Ray Davis. And honestly, he had a 9-point game pretty early on. But then Ty Johnson also throughout the entire season, 13.6 here, 13.5, 17.3, had 3 games where he scored double-digit fantasy points. I think they're both strong options. Like they both have pretty good odds of scoring double-digit fantasy points, and it's a nice matchup with the Dolphins. And we're not projected for a ton of ownership here. Ty Johnson a little bit higher than I would expect at 19%. Ray Davis at 10%. We looked at RG earlier, and it was a little bit lower there. And I think I would kind of expect the numbers to come in lighter than they are at Run the Sims. I have to remember to actually change those ownership numbers also, because I was changing a lot to get to those guys. Yeah, Ty Johnson 9% here, Ray Davis 16%. That's interesting. So Davis actually more at RG. But I had to change things pretty drastically to get to these backup running backs earlier. Maybe I need to move Ty Johnson's ownership number down. So there's something that I need to remember to do. But I like all of the Bills running backs. Well, those three. I don't think I'm going to get to Reggie Gilliam. I don't really think you need to go there. All right. I mean, if the Sims give me some Reggie Gilliam, that's fine. It's just not a priority for me. Waddle is in, Sean. All right. Yeah, game narratives. So it's not like the biggest. The way that I build lineups has never necessarily been fully like, this is how I think the game is going to go, and that is how I'm going to build my lineups. I think that you can build lineups that win in a lot of different game scripts. I think that is the game script thing is kind of overstated in the way people build lineups a lot of the time. So it's not like the biggest thing I focus on, but I do think through like what are different game scripts that I think are likely, and try to get to more of the players that I think could benefit in those. So I guess the one that I'm mostly interested in is what if the Bills just dominate and the backup running backs come in? I guess that is a game script that I'm playing through. Is just, it could be the Ray Davis show late, it could be Ty Johnson late. But yeah, it's not necessarily the way that I try to build lineups. I just try to build lineups that are going to use players that I think are better than their ownership indicates, correlate them in ways that make sense, and then just, I don't know, there's a lot of different ways the games could go that the same lineups could work out. But I think that is one of the ways that I'm building, is just think about what if the Bills dominate this game. But I also like some of the, I think I'll have some lineups that could work in a game that stays close also. All right. Todd says everyone is playing that game script. Yeah, that is kind of an obvious game script. And actually, I think the Sims, and so I do think you could just run the Sims. If you're using a Sims product, you could just run the Sims as they are, because as Todd says, everyone's sort of building for the Bills to dominate this game. So then if you run the Sims, you're going to get a lot of the Dolphins, because they're going to show the Dolphins to be under-owned in general. So that was kind of, I was sort of surprised by how much of the Dolphins I was getting. I'm going to get a fair amount of lineups that work for a game script where the Dolphins have more success than expected also, to be clear. But I guess I'm not going out of my way to get it, because I'm getting it naturally with the Sims. All right. On to the wide receivers. On the Dolphins, we have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle is in. Then you've got Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, D. Eskridge is somewhat viable. Taj Washington is ruled out for this game. So we'll start with Tyreek Hill, who is 9,800, projected for 35% flex ownership, 9% captain ownership. He's playing this game, so we can play it as though he is the elite receiver that we know him to be. Tough to really argue with playing some Tyreek Hill. His range of outcomes, I think, is pretty wide at this point. As I said, Teron Johnson is in for this game, so he's not benefiting from playing against a backup. And it is a tough matchup from the standpoint of Bills defense has only allowed 292 passing yards through 2 weeks. That is not ideal. But again, 7.1 yards per attempt is the 13th most. So they haven't been, from a per attempt basis, they have not been super elite. I think it's a fine matchup for Tyreek Hill. The price tag, obviously a little bit high. You have to make some concessions. If I'm deciding between Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa, I think I have a slight preference for Hill, which is why I think I might end up a little bit lower on Tagovailoa, because they're getting about the same ownership. Decent usage so far. It's been sort of a weird season so far for the Dolphins. Let me pull up where they so Tyreek only 71.2% route participation so far. Jalen Waddle only 71.2%. So nobody's running a ton of routes so far. But in a closer game, I could see those numbers coming up. Of course, last year they never really got to like 90% route participation either. So maybe this is just kind of the expectation there. But even on kind of limited route participation, 13 targets so far this year for Tyreek Hill. He does have 149 yards through 2 weeks. We know he's got the upside to score the 100-yard bonus, to get a bunch of receptions in this game. I don't think Tyreek is one we need to talk about all that much. All right, Tyreek is saying 2 tutties for Tyreek. Yeah, certainly plausible. Gonna get some ownership here, but I think it's viable. I think he's a strong captain play at 9% ownership. I think he's one of the top captain options on the slate. Just clearly has awesome upside. I will correlate him frequently with Tua. I think they work well. Obviously, they correlate as well as they can. Then you've got Jalen Waddle, who was limited with a shoulder injury throughout the week, projected for about 30% total ownership, 27% in the flex, 3% at captain. Again, 71.2% route participation for for Jalen Waddle. All right, where's the page I'm trying to bring up here? Has 11 targets through 2 weeks. There's always risk that he's going to leave the game mid-game, but the fact that he's playing means that he's probably healthy enough that we can expect him to make it through the game. He's not a player that I'm like going out of my way to take a big stand on. I think 30% seems fine. If I come in a little bit underweight to that, I'd be fine with it. I certainly don't want to be like sub 10% Jalen Waddle. I think that he is a better play than that, but he's 8,800. I think Tyreek is the better play, but also getting more ownership. I don't know. I think it's totally fine ownership for Jalen Waddle. I think I like him better at captain than I do in the flex. Like, I'd be sure to have at least 3% in the captain spot. I think the 27% in the flex, if I come in underweight to that, I don't have a real issue with it. He's not going to be one of my bigger stands, but I suspect I might come in underweight on that 27% in the flex. Malik Washington, one of the best value plays on the slate. He's 3,200, coming in at 30% flex ownership, 1% captain ownership. On the season, 64.4% route participation, has 7 targets through 2 weeks. Coaches love him. I believe he had a return touchdown last week, if I am remembering correctly. So that's, added bonus. You can possibly get return points if he scores a touchdown for Malik Washington. But just a fun, speedy receiver who's capable of big splash plays. The ownership scares me a little bit because, again, he has only been targeted 7 times through 2 weeks. Certainly possible to fail at 3,200. Wouldn't be that shocking to see the Dolphins defense outscore him. So if he does come in at over 30% ownership with Waddle healthy, it's a bit much to me. RG has him at 21%, which I like obviously better. I think that's probably around where I'd like to be on Malik Washington. Does obviously have the added bonus of Jalen Waddle is banged up, did come in limited with his shoulder injury. So there's just a little bit more possibility that he takes on more of a role than he has already. But I think his role is already fairly strong. I like Malik Washington. Again, one of the better value plays on the slate. I don't know that I need to be 30+% there because, again, I like the Bills running backs a little bit better, as they're just a little bit more contrarian. So I think that's a spot where I probably end up underweight if he does come in at 30-some%, just because there are other more contrarian plays that I like just as much. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, kind of just a dart throw. He's 2,000. We know that he's capable of a splash play. Not going to have a ton of usage now that we know Jalen Waddle's in. 25% route participation on the season, has just 3 targets. But again, we saw him last year broke slates, 3 weeks in a row, I think. Was just scoring touchdowns left and right. Certainly capable of a splash play. He's only $2,000. I think he's a fine dart throw, not a huge priority. But at 3%, I think that is a number I'd like to get on top of for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And another lower owned play that I'd like to mix in, maybe at the expense of some of that Malik Washington. D. Eskridge is 1,000. Fine, I guess. I mean, not super involved. 20.5% route participation on the season, 3 targets. It's kind of like a backup tight end. You need a touchdown most likely for D. Eskridge to pay off. It's not the likeliest outcome, but at 1% ownership, I think that's a gamble that you'll probably want in a 150 set, maybe not in a 20 lineup set. Bill side is a little bit more interesting. I think they're always fairly spread out. Curtis Samuel is out for this game. Keon Coleman versus Khalil Shakir to me is one of the more interesting conversations because last year it was Keon Coleman. He led all receivers on the Bills by 26, all pass catchers. He led the team in targets by 26 last year. So far this year, that has not been the case. It's been Keon Coleman actually leading over Khalil Shakir. And there was, so he was dealing with a high ankle sprain coming into the year. And one of the Twitter doctors did say that he's expecting a dip in production for the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. We're in week 3, so maybe we're still seeing some dip in production for Khalil Shakir. But you would expect that he's getting a little bit healthier each week, so maybe we see less of a dip this week. The not promising thing for Shakir is he's very much a target merchant. Like we need him to get the targets to rack up fantasy points. He only has 9 targets through 2 weeks. That's obviously not ideal. It is worth noting that if you look through matchup stuff, so the Dolphins have played cover 2 defense at the second highest rate in the league this year so far, which is just like 30%, not like a massive rate, but second highest in the league. And you look at Khalil Shakir against cover 2 matchups last year, he was one of the best wide receivers in the league against cover 2 last year. I believe he was 3rd of all receivers in terms of separation score, 3rd best of all receivers who had at least 100 routes run. And this year, he's still like top 15 in terms of separation against cover 2. So I do think this is probably a good matchup for Khalil Shakir. I think he's a little bit sneaky. And even without any kind of coverage stuff, it's just using the larger sample size. He has been Josh Allen's favorite target. We are kind of jumping to the conclusion based on the first couple weeks that maybe Keon Coleman has taken a step up and he's going to dust Khalil Shakir. I think a lot of people are kind of making that assumption. But until we have a larger sample size, I'm willing to make the bet that Khalil Shakir, maybe he's still Josh Allen's favorite. Maybe it was just happened to happen in that first game that, is a good game for Keon Coleman. If you look at some of the stats, like he didn't really create any separation in that first game. His touchdown for Keon Coleman was off a deflected ball. There's some fluky stuff going on there. So I'm not sure that I'm willing to say just yet that Keon Coleman has actually surpassed Khalil Shakir in the pecking order. Last week we had, I said on the earlier show, I was going to look at whether Keon Coleman was actually shadowed by Sauce Gardner. He was covered by Sauce Gardner, I believe, 54% of the time. So not truly a shadow situation last week for Keon Coleman. So I don't think that necessarily accounts for the little bit of a dip there. So I am intrigued by a lower owned Khalil Shakir here today. If you're buying into Keon Coleman just having surpassed him, I think that's totally reasonable. I think that's a possibility that Keon Coleman has just passed him. But I think there's more, you can benefit more tonight by playing it as though Khalil Shakir is still that guy. And that's the way I plan on playing it, where Khalil Shakir is projected for 29% flex ownership and 7% captain ownership. Keon Coleman 39% and 8%. Keon Coleman a couple $100 more expensive. If we look at RG, where do they have it? They have Coleman at 28%, Khalil Shakir at 27%. So they actually have it closer in terms of the ownership. But again, this is this $6,600 price tag for Khalil Shakir. He was a sometimes $8,000, $9,000 player last year. So I think I'd like to play it as though Shakir maybe is still that guy. Beyond those two, and Keon Coleman still, he's only 6,800, and he's been a pretty strong play so far this year. Also, I'm happy to get to some Coleman. I just think my bigger stand is going to be on Shakir of those two. Then you've got Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, and Tyrell Shavers are all more tertiary options, with Palmer obviously being the top of that list. Looking at their usage so far this year, Palmer has 12 targets on 66.3% route participation. Then you have Tyrell Shavers actually Elijah Moore, 2 targets on 22.9% route participation. Tyrell Shavers, 2 targets on 13.3% route participation. They're more, large field dart throws. But I think Josh Palmer is actually viable in like a 20 lineup set. I would want to have definitely some exposure to Josh Palmer. He's not projected for, he's 24% total ownership, or 24 in the flex, 2 in the captain spot for Josh Palmer. Not super high owned. I think that's about right. I think he's Strong play at 4,800. Elijah Moore, 3,600. Seems a little bit much for his role, but not getting any ownership as a result. I think that's a fine play. Let's see. Yeah, 5% ownership. Honestly, that's not too bad. 3,600. Kind of a tough question because it's like he's definitely too expensive for his role. But then if it's going to bring his ownership that far down, kind of intrigued by it. He certainly is live for a touchdown here. They spread the ball around a bit. I think it's fine. Probably 5% is about right. If he was 2%, I think that's a really strong play. If he is 5%, I think he's a fine play, but not like a huge priority. And then Shaver is kind of the same thing. Shaver's not projected for much ownership at all. Doesn't have a huge role on the team. Sims are going to give me some for sure, and I will accept those Shaver's shares. I think that's it as far as the wide receivers. Yep. So I'll move on and talk about the tight ends. And check in with chat first. Let's see. Trying to see. Are you talking to me? Go says trust the tools. I mean, yeah, I agree. You can, and I've said this before. Like I make a lot of changes to the lineups. I make a lot of changes to the inputs. That's just the way that I like to play. But I think there are sometimes I like to play certain angles. I think it's totally viable to just use the sims that are given to you, especially if you're using the shady portfolio optimizer. Just like trust the inputs, and over time, you're probably going to be a profitable DFS player. You're going to be entering plus EV lineups if you just use the inputs that they give you. Use the shady portfolio optimizer. If you don't have angles that you want to play, no issue with just trusting the tools. I like to make some changes to play different angles in games as I see them. Some games certainly more than others. This is one where I don't know that I'm gaining any kind of real edge by making the changes, because I don't have like super strong leans here. I have some reads that I want to play it, but yeah, I think it's totally viable to just trust the tools and take what they give you. All right, tight ends. All right, I got to move it down. No, I did. Good. All right. So it's an interesting game for tight ends because Darren Waller still out. We have not seen awesome usage for the tight ends on the Dolphins. We have Tanner Connor and Julian Hill splitting things for the Dolphins. Let me pull up their usage numbers. So through 2 weeks, we have Tanner Connor 4 targets on 52.1% route participation. If I recall correctly, all 4 of those targets came in week 1, which, plus and minus, you'd rather it be in week 2, and he's ascending, but also, good to know that in the right game script, they can target Tanner Connor 4 times. That does seem promising with an ADOT of 7.3. He's only 800. I think he's a pretty strong play if he's not getting crazy high ownership. 15% projected ownership for Tanner Connor. I think that he is fairly strong play at 15%. I don't think that I want like half of my lineups to be reliant on Tanner Connor, but I do think more than 15% is probably where I'd like to be. I think he is a fairly strong play. Then you've got Julian Hill at so he's 21.9% route participation so far on the year, 0 targets so far. I think that he's viable, kind of the classic backup tight end, maybe slightly better than that, because I don't think that like Tanner Connor has established himself as a starter. I think Julian Hill could very easily take on a bigger workload. Actually, let me look at Route Share Report. He actually went down 28% to 16% in week 2, which is not your favorite thing to see if you're playing Julian Hill, but I don't think there's a clearly established pecking order. I'm not sure that they buy into Tanner Connor to such an extent that I'm confident it's going to be, these numbers are going to hold as they are. So I think Julian Hill, as a player who could just see a bump in usage, is a totally fine play at minimal ownership at 1,400. I think Tanner Connor, like the better projection play pretty clearly. But if you want to make the bet that Julian Hill is going to get more work this week, I think that is a viable way to play it. RG has him at 4% ownership. Yeah, totally viable tight end. Not like huge priorities, either of them, but I think those ownership numbers are pretty good. Then on the Bills, you've got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Kincaid is 5,400, Dawson Knox 2,400, both projected for just a little over 20% ownership and then 1% in the captain spot. Man, neither of them getting that great of usage so far on the season. Dalton Kincaid is at 10 targets. Actually, that's not too bad through 2 weeks. 10 targets, but just 56.6% route participation. Decent usage for a tight end, but has not really taken like a huge step forward in his production. Dawson Knox, 6 targets also and 42.2% route participation. Kind of interesting. Dawson Knox is one that I had looked at before week 1. I wanted to see because in my mind he's capable of some big fantasy games. He hasn't had any big fantasy games in a few years at this point. It's like 2022 or something. What was the last time Dawson Knox had a big fantasy game, at least prior to this year? Now I'm questioning, has he had any big games this year? Because he's been fairly involved. Yeah, 4-4. It's been a while since Dawson Knox really put up a fantasy score that you wanted. Kincaid, to his credit, did have a big week 1, 14.8 fantasy points, then 7.7 in week 2. With this price difference, I still think I prefer Kincaid slightly. I'm certainly going to be under 23% on Dawson Knox. I don't think that he's that strong of a play. Again, he just has not scored double-digit fantasy points in like a few years. I think maybe he did once or twice, but he has not been much of a fantasy factor for a few years now. And we all remember it was a few years ago. He was awesome a couple times with Josh Allen. They connected on some big plays. Certainly capable of scoring a touchdown and paying off this $2,400 price tag, but it just we haven't really seen it the past few years. So if he's going to be somewhat chalky, I think I'm going to have to be underweight on Dawson Knox. Dalton Kincaid, I think I do want to be right with the field there. But yeah, Dawson Knox, I think I'm going to come in underweight there just because there are other options that I like better in the price range who are getting lesser ownership. And then you've got Jackson Hayes is 600. I think he's if the Sims give me some Hayes, I will be fine with that. Just 2 targets though on 7% route participation on the year. Not a huge priority for me, just a maybe because he's low enough owned. If the Sims give me some, sure, I'll accept it. All right, let me move this down and check in on chat. How sharp is Hendy pivot off Mason Chalk? I haven't even looked at the main slate yet, so I couldn't tell you. Or I've very little looked at the main slate. I guess I've looked at it a little bit. All right. Thoughts on Elijah Moore? I think he's fine. I'm not a huge Elijah Moore guy, but he is getting low enough ownership that I think he's, what do we have him at? 2%, 3,600. It's just the price tag is so high on Elijah Moore for his 20-some% usage. I like him. Like if he comes in at sub 5%, I think he's a pretty good play. But I think like 5 to 10% is where I would like to be. I'm not like going way over the field because again, he just hasn't had that great of usage, and I don't think we have any real reason to think it's going to be increased, except for that he's on the Bills and you just never know. But not like a huge priority for me. All right, favorite tight end for Miami. I mean, probably Tanner Conner just for the usage, but Julian Hill will be the more contrarian option. So I think he's somebody I'm more likely to be overweight just because he's not getting any ownership. Do I think Allen Captain with 4 pass catches will be low owned? I do think it will be. All right. Defenses and kickers. Riley Patterson, 4,400, projected for 15% ownership. Dolphins defense, just 3,000, projected for 3% ownership. Matt Prater is 5,000, projected for 29% and 1% at captain. Bills defense, 5,800, projected for 13% and 3% at captain. I do think that I'd like to be overweight on the Bills defense. Actually, both defenses kind of stand out to me. The Bills more because I think they probably have an actually good defense. They are expensive, but they would benefit from the Dolphins not doing that well in a way that, a lot of the field is going to play it as though the Bills dominate this game, but still Bills defense not projected for a ton of ownership. So I think that's a way that they could have a really great game and still you're unique from the field. The field is just playing the Bills defense against a kind of shaky Miami team in general. So I think the Bills defense is something that I want to make sure I have at least with the field here at the 16% total ownership. Prater 30%. I mean, if I come in 10% lower than that, I'd be fine with it. If I come in 5% higher than that, I think I'd be okay with it. Not going to be a huge stand there. I think ultimately I probably want to be a little bit underweight to Prater, probably. Patterson at 15% seems fine. Dolphins defense, 3% does seem really low. Man, 3.1 projected points is so low for a defense. But I guess there's a lot of scenarios where they score negative fantasy points. So ultimately, I think if I were ranking them, it would probably be Bills defense, followed by Prater, followed by Dolphins defense, followed by Patterson, because that $3,000 price tag is pretty nice. Like that's low enough that it's like you just need something to go a little bit wonky, and you're happy with the $3,000. So yeah, I think that would be the order for me. I did note on the show earlier, I kind of looked into, have there actually been more field goals attempted this year? As I've speculated, there might be on these shows. And it's been just a slight uptick with the change in the kickoff rules. It went from 2.04 attempts per team per game to 2.2. So slightly more field goals this season, maybe a slight benefit to kickers, but it has actually not been that huge. How much in goal do you have? I'll run the Sims here, so that'll be the next step of this show. Yeah, definitely Ty Johnson included as a pass catcher for sure. All right, let's move on to that next section, and here is where I like to take just a brief look at FanDuel, and then I'm going to run some lineups. I know that there are some people who are FanDuel players, so I'll just take a brief look at FanDuel numbers. Actually, I can do this in Run the Sims, can't I? I can go to NFL. All right, give me a minute for the slates to load. We can take a little look at the pricing. I'm going to refresh. This doesn't usually take any time. All right. I guess I'll look at this on FanDuel. I'm not sure why the slate is taken, or on RG, I should say. All right, so just looking briefly at FanDuel, I'm going to start looking at the MVPs. So you're getting a ton of ownership to Josh Allen. I think that's probably warranted. Maybe this would be high. If he's at 38%, I probably want a little bit less, but I think he should be the MVP, the MVP, the highest owned MVP. Devin Achane at 20% feels totally fine to me. Cook at 10% feels really good. Hill at 6%. I don't know that I love Tua at 9.5%. Probably not my favorite, but Tyreek Hill at 6%. I like that number. Khalil Shakir at 3% feels pretty good. Actually, Keon Coleman is cheaper and also 3%. So maybe on FanDuel, if they're coming in at the same ownership and Coleman is cheaper, maybe I actually prefer Coleman slightly on FanDuel. I think Bills defense is kind of a sneaky contrarian play at 2%. Josh Palmer's fine. Yeah, I'd say those are the ones that stand out to me on FanDuel. I think if you want to play like a weird MVP, Ray Davis is one that I would consider at 4.8K at MVP on FanDuel. But yeah, my favorites at ownership, like if I were doing a single entry, it would probably be either James Cook or Devin Achane would be my first, just because Josh Allen's getting so much ownership here. Hill would probably be among my favorites. And then if you want to go even more contrarian, sub 5%, it would be probably Coleman before Shakir on FanDuel. But those are the ones that kind of stand out to me at MVP. And then at flex, I think I'd be underweight to Tua. Allen's pretty expensive, so I actually don't know that I would get more than the field of Josh Allen, because he can be the highest scorer and still not make the optimal at this price tag. HN, I like that price, 34%. I mean, James Cook at 26% feels pretty good. And then, yeah, again, both Coleman and Shakir. Actually, they're a little bit expensive here, which is probably why they're not getting much ownership. So they don't stand out quite as much as they do on DraftKings. Palmer, kind of a nice price saver at 5.4. Again, Ray Davis at 3.2 looks pretty good. Tanner Connor, a nice price savings at 1.6K here. And then again, yeah, Ty Johnson not quite as cheap here, 4.2K seems fine. Kind of a tough slate on FanDuel. We don't have a lot of value here. I'm just trying to find like who are the guys that make it all work, and we don't have many of those guys on FanDuel. So I guess Tanner Connor probably the best value, but he's going to be. I guess he's only projected for 12% ownership. So if he does come in this low, I think Tanner Connor is just a fantastic play on FanDuel. So I guess he's the one that stands out to me when you factor in the ownership, assuming this ownership number is real. Wouldn't be surprised if he comes in higher, just because we have such little value and he stands out. But Palmer, Kincaid both look good at their price tags. Keon Coleman, actually Malik Washington, 22% is not that ridiculous for Malik Washington at 2,800 on a slate where there's very little value. He actually, I skipped past him because I thought I was going to find better value, but no, he's 2.8K and not getting that crazy high of ownership. I think that's actually pretty good there. All right. I'm going to go back to build my lineups. So go into the game on DraftKings. Just going to click reset all, make sure that everything is where it needs to be. Then I'm going to run the sims. I'm going to set my settings at number of lineups, 15,000. I don't even think I need that many based on my earlier sims. Sometimes I go higher, but I'm just going to do 15,000 lineup simmed in a field of 15,000 and number of simulations, 10,000. I'm going to go top heavy payout structure. And then I'm going to use the shady portfolio diversifier, which is just going to give me a plus EV portfolio of lineups rather than just the top 256. I'm playing 256 lineups tonight. Rather than just giving me the top lineups by EV, it's going to give me the top overall EV. So it's going to give me lineups that don't eat into each other, don't cannibalize each other. So I'm going to use that. And now I'm just going to click Sim Runner Pro. So you saw I didn't change the inputs at all for this run. Just want to see what it gives me before I make any changes. Yeah, good reminder from Dan. Appreciate that. Please do hit the like button if you have not already done so. Of course, subscribe to the channel. Hoping to get to 5,000 by the end of this week and 6,000 by the end of the NFL season. So your support is very much appreciated. In season long, Chiefs or Bills defense this week. I want to play Dolphins tonight, so I want to play Chiefs in season long. I think that's fine. I don't even remember who the Chiefs are playing this week, though. So, yeah, can't help you with that. Coleman or Shakir at captain on DraftKings. I prefer Shakir to Coleman. On FanDuel, I prefer Coleman to Shakir, based on the ownership numbers we've seen here. Shakir's ownership at captain on DraftKings. I don't think I want to move away from this screen, so I don't want to look here, but I think it was like 3% or something, pretty low. Who will score 2 touchdowns? I mean, the likeliest, obviously, if we're excluding the quarterbacks, the likeliest players to score 2 touchdowns, probably Devin Achane, followed by James Cook, followed by Tyreek Hill, seem the likeliest. Shakir Coleman, last player. Yeah, it'd be Shakir for me. But again, I'm not super confident in my read that it's not even necessarily my Can you hear me now? Testing, testing. Can you hear me now? My thing says that you can hear me now. I can see it moving. Okay. Jacob says yes. Okay, good. I don't know what happened there. That was annoying. All right, we're back. We've got some lineups here. Hopefully that does not continue to happen. So you can see before I made any changes, first lineup I got here, Devin Achane with Tanner Connor, the only other Dolphin in the lineup. We've got James Cook, Josh Allen, Josh Palmer, Matt Prater. Second lineup is James Cook, Devin Achane, Ray Davis. Oh, so we're getting to more. These lineups are closer to what I was kind of hoping for when I made my video earlier. So this is cool. Tanner Connor, Tua, and Tyreek Hill. You can see that the lineups I'm getting here are mostly using the full salary cap. I might make some changes to look at the number of dupes and set the limit, but honestly, we're getting fairly low dupes here, which is good to see. But a lot of these lineups using kind of the full salary. I'm going to look at the player exposures here. So you can see I'm getting to a lot of Devin Achane in my top lineups as the captain and James Cook. Not a ton of Josh Allen. I guess he's in my top lineup here, but then not in the second or third. He's in the fourth. All right, let's look at the player exposures. Okay, so these are way closer to numbers that I'm comfortable with than before. When I was running this, I was getting to like 0 Josh Allen. This is a little bit better for me. So 41% at flex, 11% at captain. Looking good here. Sweetback Willie says I gave out the winning Millie lineup, but I was muted. Yeah, exactly. All my best thoughts were when I was muted there. So I'm pretty comfortable with around 50% Josh Allen. This assumes a really high ownership projection for him. I think I'm actually going to lower his ownership projection. I might end up getting more Josh Allen. Tua, I'm at 49% in the flex, 7% at captain. That's a lot of Tua. No real issue with those numbers. But he's one that I'd be fine sacrificing if I need to get to other players more. Running back. So here's where I'm really interested, because this is where I need to make some earlier today, based on what I was doing earlier, I needed to make some big changes. So here I'm seeing Devin Achane, I'm getting to 65% in the flex and 28% in the captain. Now, to be clear, I love Devin Achane, and I think he's a fantastic play. I don't want over 90% Devin Achane, though. So I am going to try to get to less of Devin Achane, and I can see an easy way to do that is to increase the Ollie Gordon market share, because as I was saying earlier, the coach speak was kind of indicating that they wanted to get Ollie Gordon more involved last week. I don't really know if that's true, to what extent that's true, but I'm willing to, if he's going to get 0 ownership, I'm willing to take that chance and try to get to more Ollie Gordon. So I'm going to increase Ollie Gordon's rushing market share, which will come at the expense of Devin Achane, maybe bring down the Achane ownership a little bit. Of the Bills, I think James Cook a really strong play. I like that I'm getting a 64%. Just an objectively strong play in a great matchup. But I also want to have a fair amount of Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. As you can see here, I'm currently getting to 22%. Ray Davis at flex, love that. 6% Ty Johnson. I'd like to bring this number up, and I think the reason I'm getting to so little is he's projected for 19% flex ownership here, and I'd be pretty surprised if he comes in at 19%. Maybe not shocked, actually. He's only 1,600, but I think I'd like to get to more, and I suspect he'll come in lower than 19%. So I'm going to lower that Ty Johnson number a little bit, the ownership projection. And then Alec Ingold, I'm getting to a bit $400 salary, only project for 1% ownership. I got 7%. I'm totally comfortable with that. I'm okay if I don't get to any Gilliam or Jalen Wright, but I do want to make sure I get to some Ollie Gordon. At wide receiver, I'm only getting to 39% Tyreek Hill, 9% of that coming at captain, 30% in the flex. Probably want more. Definitely want more than the 10% I'm getting of Keon Coleman, even with the stands that I'm talking about here, where I prefer Shakir. That's just not enough Keon Coleman in a game where they could score a lot of points. I'd be okay getting to less than the 37% Malik Washington I'm currently getting. He is a really strong value. But again, it'd be pretty easy to see him failing, and there's a lot of players in his price range that are coming in contrarian that I like here. Josh Palmer, I'm getting to 30%. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I think he's a strong play. Jalen Waddle, 24%. Honestly, I'm comfortable with that. And I did, as I noted earlier, I wanted to get to higher than 3% at captain. Didn't care as much about whether I get over the field in the flex, and that's exactly what I got. 24%, but 6% of it at captain. I like that for Jalen Waddle. Definitely want more Shakir than 9%. Nick Westbrook-Ikine, 12%, seems like a lot. I'd be fine if it stays. I'd be fine if I lose some of that. Tyrell Shivers, 4% seems fine. Elijah Moore, I think I want more than 0.5%. Don't have any D. Eskridge. Kickers, okay, so I'm at 42% Matt Prater and 2% at captain. I'd be fine losing some of my Prater to get to more of the position players. Riley Patterson, I'm at 19%. I'm fine with that number. Tight ends, I am getting to 28% Tanner Connor here, 13% Dalton Kincaid, 1% in the captain spot. I'm fine with that. I probably want a little bit more of Dalton Kincaid. I'm only at 3% Dawson Knox. And as I said, I wanted to get to under the field. 3% feels like a risk, but I'm not that upset with that risk. If I end up with just 3%, I think I'm fine largely fading Dawson Knox. A little bit scary at 2,400 if he's going to be 23% owned, because he could absolutely bury me, but he's definitely too high owned in my mind. So I'd probably want to be just slightly over this 2.5% if I had my way, but I'm okay with that. And then 7% Julian Hill. I think that's good. A little bit over the field there. Again, I think could take on a bigger workload than expected. Defenses, I'm getting 15% of the Bills, less than 1% of Buffalo. I think I'd like a little bit more of the defenses, particularly the Bills. But we'll see. We'll see what I can do here. I'm going to start making some changes to the inputs. So first of all, as I said, I think I'm going to increase Ollie Gordon's market share, and I'm going to click this Smart Adjust button. So that is going to, as you can see here, maintain the proportions between market share and touchdown market share. So if I just change the market share, it's going to proportionally change the touchdown market share for me. So I'm going to move Ollie Gordon from 8% rushing market share to, oh, and okay, so Jalen Wright is currently at 10%. I'm going to give Ollie Gordon 15% and move Jalen Wright to 3%. Just kind of guessing there. But I know that I'd rather take the risk on Gordon. It's getting to a lot of Washington, not as much Waddle and Hill. I'm going to move Washington's market share down to 10%. And then it went back up. Okay, so I'm going to move that down to... No, never mind. Still, never mind. It's right at 10%. Yeah, we're good there. We're good. All right, I'm going to click normalize. All right, what do I need to change here? Oh, and that's part of the reason I'm getting to a lot of Washington is he does have that rushing also. I forgot to mention that when I was going over the receivers, that Malik Washington does have 4 carries on the year for 32 yards, and he is a speedy guy. So that's kind of I actually sort of missed that as I was doing the analysis of the wide receivers earlier. That was a miss on my part. He's a better play than I was giving him credit for, because it's easy for him to fail just based on the passing workload, but the rushing does help him quite a bit. So I think he's a better play than I was giving him credit for earlier. With those, for a player who's as dynamic as he is with those 4 carries, he's pretty intriguing. But I'm cutting some of that market share, and maybe I'll cut off. All right, who am I getting to? Gonna just move, not give Tua any rushing touchdown market share. All right, that's better. And then maybe I move up the sack rate slightly. I'm just going to move up the sack rate to 4%. Maybe it makes a difference, maybe not. All right. And then here's where I made some pretty big differences earlier in the day when I was doing this to get to more of the running backs. I'm getting to a number I'm more comfortable with right now. I'm going to move Josh Allen's captain ownership from 35% to 25%, more in line with other places and kind of my expectation. Oh, and I'm going to click Smart Adjust. And Ty Johnson, I'm going to move down to 12% projected ownership, move Ray Davis up to 12%. Normalize in the flex. Again, I'm trying to take a little bit of a stand on Khalil Shakir here. I do kind of like all of the receivers also here. In general, I'd say I'm getting to less of the Bills than I'd like. So I'm actually going to move up some of these Bills numbers from pace of 61. I'm going to move that all the way up to 66. and points scored to 33. And I'm going to move the rush rate up to 50%. I think that's going to help me get more of the running backs. And then I want to move up Khalil Shakir's. Oh, I could lose some of this Dawson Knox, but I was already not getting much. So now I'm debating. Oh, I think I'm going to get a little bit less of Devin Achane after moving his rushing market share down a little bit. I'm going to move him down even more. Okay. Because that'll help me get a little bit more of the Bills guys. I think I might just leave the rest. I want to get a little bit less of Matt Prater and more of the skill players, I think. Just a little bit. Oh, and more of the Bills defense. I'm going to move up their sack rate. I don't know if there's a way to just easily get rid of some of the kicker. I'm going to try just moving the projected points down to 9. See if that does anything. Yeah, I don't see a way to change like the proportion of the scoring that goes to the kicker, but I'm going to try this. Hopefully I can get in 2 more sim runs here. Yes, please do like the video. Hoping to get over 100. Hoping to get over 5,000 subs by the weekend. How are we feeling? How are we feeling about the slate? I'm feeling okay about it. I don't know. Bills are always tough because they spread the ball around, but then ultimately it's just like, oh yeah, it's just James Cook and Josh Allen scoring most of the points most of the time. I did not make any FanDuel lineups. Ooh, who's your Strangler $200 player? I don't know what that is, a Strangler player, but I don't think there are any. I don't remember any 200. Maybe is Tyrell Shavers 200? I can't remember any $200 players that I love, but when I go back, I can take a look. Once the sims are done running, gotta let them finish up here because I want to do a real quick adjustment here and then do it one more time. What's up, Sammy? Go Buffalo War Pigs. Haven't seen Sammy in a minute. But I am excited to just have football back tonight. So there's that about tonight. Glad Tucker Kraft does not appear to be seriously hurt, but man, it's some weird reporting on the Tucker Kraft situation. He's hurt, but don't worry, it does not appear to be season ending. That was funny. Like we were not worried about that until you made us worry about it just now by saying don't worry about it. Calculating payouts. All right, we're getting there. We're getting close. Mike says, holy shit, 20 minutes after you subscribe to chat, be better. You saying I need to be better? I think you're referring to, did I set the rule that you cannot comment in chat until you've been subscribed for at least 20 minutes? First of all, Mike, do you subscribe and unsubscribe daily? Because this is not your first time here. But yeah, it's because I was getting so many bots I had to. And it's been very helpful. I'm not trying to gatekeep the chat, except that I am trying to gatekeep the damn bots. right, calculating payouts. Let's get it. Almost there. I'm not sure if I really want to be able to do one more run after this one, but we'll see if I have time. Maybe I can do fewer lineups for the next one too. Thank you, Neil, for recognizing. Exactly. Do you get anxious about the sim taking long to run when it gets close to kickoff? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I mean, I also know that like it's going to give me good lineups regardless, I think. And I did already put some lineups in. So like I've got lineups in. We're good from that standpoint. Oh, it's a good reminder if you're not already in the Flaniverse Discord, it is free to join. There is also a paid membership to the channel. I have not done much with the paid membership. It's really at this point just support. I'm hoping to start doing a little bit more behind the paywall. So far, there has not been much there, but most of the Discord is just entirely free to join. You can find the link in the description of this video if you're interested in joining fantasy football community where we talk DFS, best ball, all the other formats. One of them being flash drafts, which is one of my favorite formats and one that I forget to play. But people are often like, "Hey, the advice you gave on flash drafts has really helped. Winning a lot of money in flash drafts." And then I'm like, "Hey, why don't I play flash drafts every single night that I can?" Because I think it's the highest ROI format for me. Obviously, maybe not lifetime, but like year over year, the most consistent at least. All right, there we go. Josh Allen, Kincaid, Palmer, Coleman, Ty Johnson, Devin Achane in the first one. Then we got Devin Achane with Cook, Washington, Connor, Tua, Tyreek Hill. Lineup's looking good. Let me just double check the exposures, see if anything is wonky here. All right, now we're getting to a lot more Josh Allen. Glad to see that. A little bit less Tua. It's a little bit scary, but he's not one that I'm taking a huge stand on. A little bit less of Devin Achane, still getting to 90, a little over 90% Devin Achane, so I could manage to lose a little bit less there. James Cook, 50% in the flex, 21% at captain, 23% Ray Davis, love that. 14% Ty Johnson, wouldn't mind even a little bit more there. 8% Ingold, I'm comfortable with that. Up to 5.5% Ollie Gordon. Honestly, wouldn't even mind a little bit more Ollie Gordon, but we're getting closer to where I'd like to be. Wide receiver, we've got a little bit more Tyreek Hill here. Still just 17, 18% Keon Coleman. That's fine. I'd like a little bit more, but it is what it is. 25, 33, 34% total to Josh Palmer looks good. Not a ton of Jalen Waddle, still a little bit overweight at captain. That's fine. Would like some more Khalil Shakir. A little bit under the field on Malik Washington. Generally pretty happy with these. Not really getting into any Elijah Moore. Might want to adjust that. All right, let's see. Tight ends got to a little bit more. Still more Tanner Connor. A lot of Dalton Kincaid. Not getting to a ton of Dawson Knox. I think I'm cool with that. 10% Julian Hill looks good. Still getting, okay, a lot less of the kickers now, down to 13% Prater, 15.5% Riley Patterson. Defenses were at 10%. Bills, none of the Dolphins, basically. All right, so here's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to, first of all, download these lineups and put them in, and then I'm going to try to do one more sim if I have time, which I probably won't, but I'm going to try it. So give me a second here while I put my lineups in. All right. All right, good. Now I'm going to try to run the sims one more time. Although, again, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, so it's not the most important thing, but I'm just going to try to see if I can make some slight adjustments. So I think I want a little bit less of Achane. So I'm going to move his rushing market share down to 55%. Ollie Gordon's up to 19%. Oop, that didn't work. And then click normalize. And then I also am going to bring down Achan's receiving market share slightly because I'm getting into so much and I want more of Hill and Waddle, I think. So I'm going to bring down his receiving market share to 16%. Hopefully I'm not overdoing it here. That is obviously a slight concern here, is that I'm actually overdoing what I'm trying to do, but bringing that down to hopefully get to a little bit more of Hill. Maybe slightly more of Waddle. I was getting to more Josh Allen last time, so that's good. Wouldn't mind even a little bit more of Ty Johnson. So I'm going to bring up his receiving market share to 6%. I think I'm going to move down the rush rate slightly. Bring it back down because I wasn't getting to much of the receivers. Yeah, I think I'll still get a fair amount of the running backs. I'm going to bring up the Khalil Shakir receiving market share. Yeah. All right. Normalize. I think that's good enough. Wasn't going to get any Curtis Samuel. Maybe I want to change that slightly. Or sorry, Elijah Moore, I mean. All right, now I'm going to normalize. We'll bring back down Shavers. All right. We'll see. I probably don't have time, but I'm going to try this now. I'm going to go to settings, move this to just 10,000 lineups. And we'll run it. See what comes out. Would you play Malik Washington at captain? If I get to a little, I'm fine with it. He would not be in like my first 10 captain lineups. But in a 150 set, I think he's fine. All right, we'll see if we get this in. This one I think starts at 7:15 Central, so this is probably not happening. It is a good way to pay the rake. I did get some lineups in though already. All right, that's cool. Not So Narrow says, I had a hit last week from a lineup that was on your stream. Sim results, a lot of dupes, but still was sweet. Yeah, I had I won the mini max, so I had one that would have been 15,000 if it was in the main on Monday, but unfortunately I had it in mini max instead. Yeah, exactly. We're all afraid of Hill this year. All right, good. We got some new blood in the Flannelverse Discord. Love to see that. Just got a DM. I will take a look at it, Anthony. It's a close one. I like both those lineups. Yeah, I'd say keep the lineup. I'd say keep the Keon one. I think it looks good. They both look strong, honestly, but I like that one plays all the hits. A lot of strong plays in there. Calculating payouts. This is going to be tight. I'm probably not going to make it with this one. But wish me luck. And I won't have time to really review it. Really, I should be doing this starting a little bit earlier so I can start doing the lineups earlier, because I'm not really completing a full process on these shows most of the time. It was a little bit better when I was on the 2-gamer, gave myself a little bit more time. But I also trust that the sims are going to get faster over time. Right now, giving yourself 30 minutes for my process, just not quite enough. Calculating payouts. Let's get to diversifying. Yeah, all right, we're not going to get there. We've got less than a minute left. Well, it is what it is. I think the lineups I had are good ones. Hopefully, Devin Achane just crushes, and I'm happy to have that 90% of him. But yeah, at this point, fairly confident that we're not going to be diversifying the payouts in the 30 seconds we have remaining. So I am going to get out of here, but would highly recommend checking out Run the Sims. I've been doing sim videos on Saturdays about the main slate. Have had some success using them. You can get 10% off using promo code Neil. I think that it is an awesome product. Love the diversifier as well. That is the most expensive product. I'm sure the optimizer with the Utica projections are also very good. All right, we are out of time on this one. Make sure that you play a little bit of the flash drafts. Check out my little write up in the Discord if you're interested. Play some flash drafts because they are profitable way to play during the season. Especially after DFS lineups are dead. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's get it. I will be back here on Sunday night for the Sunday night breakdown. And of course, I'll have some of those main slate breakdowns as well. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you later. Good luck tonight.